Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a really cool question. Are we actually smarter together? We tend to think of genius as this lone wolf thing, but what if real intelligence is scattered all around us, in all of us, just waiting to be tapped into? Let's dive in.
All right, so let's jump right in with a challenge. Who would you put your money on in a contest? A single, seasoned expert with years of specialized knowledge, or just a random crowd of people? The answer is probably not what you think.
So picture this. It's a livestock fair in England, way back in 1906. A statistician named Francis Galton is watching this contest. The game is super simple. Guess the weight of an ox. You've got nearly 800 people writing down their guesses. Butchers, farmers, regular folks. And importantly, none of them were, professional ox wearers.
So Galton, being a numbers guy, gets curious. He collects all the valid guesses, 787 of them. And instead of looking for the best guess, he calculates the median. That's the guess right in the middle of the pack. And that number came out to 1,197 pounds, a very specific guess from a very random group.
And here is the kicker. The actual weight of that ox was 1,198 pounds. The crowd's collective guess was off by a single pound. And get this, their guess was more accurate than any single individual guess that day. Better than the farmers, better than the butchers, better than anyone. This is a perfect classic example of what we call collective intelligence. And look, this wasn't just some lucky fluke. This phenomenon has a name, collective intelligence, or CI for short. It's this incredible ability that can emerge from a group, allowing it to solve problems better than any single person inside it. Sometimes it comes from just adding up different pieces of information, like with the ox. And sometimes it comes from people actively working together. Okay, but how does this stuff actually work? Is it always just about averaging a bunch of guesses? Well, not exactly. It turns out that collective intelligence kind of comes in two main flavors, and it all depends on how the group operates. On one hand, you've got the wisdom of crowds. That's our ox story. It's all about combining independent bits of info from a diverse group of people. It's about tapping into what a group knows in total. But on the other hand, you have collaborative intelligence. Researchers actually measure this with something called the C factor, and this is all about the dynamics of a team that's actively working together. It's not about what they know, it's about how they think as a group.
So this leads to a really crucial question. When you've got a team collaborating, what actually makes it smart? The obvious answer seems to be just pack the room with the people who have the highest IQs, right? Just get the smartest individuals. Well, some researchers at MIT decided to put that exact idea to the test.
And what they found was kind of shocking. It turns out that a group's collective smarts had almost nothing to do with the average individual IQ of its members. It also wasn't predicted by how motivated the team was, or how much they liked each other, or even how happy they were with the results. All the things we think should matter didn't.
So if it's not raw IQ, then what is it? Well, three things really stood out. First, the average social sensitivity of the group, basically how good people were reading each other's nonverbal cues. Second was how evenly people spoke. Groups where everyone got a chance to contribute did way better than groups where one or two people dominated the conversation. And third, they found that groups with more women tended to be smarter. And the researchers noted this was largely because women, on average, tend to score higher on that social sensitivity test. All right, so this is all fascinating stuff in a lab, but what about the real world? Does this actually work out there? Oh, absolutely. Let's look at some seriously powerful examples of collective intelligence in action.
Just think about Wikipedia for a second. It's this massive, world-class encyclopedia, but it wasn't built by a handful of paid experts. It was built and is constantly maintained by millions of volunteers from all over the planet. It's a system that runs on consensus and participation, funneling the knowledge of the entire world into one place.
And for these huge projects like Wikipedia, the Linux operating system, to really work, scientists have found they usually need four things. First, openness. People have to be willing to share ideas. Second is peering, which means people organize themselves without a boss telling them what to do. Third is sharing, finding a balance between giving ideas away and protecting others. And finally, acting globally, using technology to bring in talent and knowledge from everywhere.
So what's with this number? 542 to 1? Well, those were the odds of correctly picking the top 4 horses in the right order at the Kentucky Derby, and a group of people working together in real time online in what they called a human swarm did exactly that. They turned a $20 bet into more than $10,000. That's the predictive power of collective intelligence.
This idea is even changing how we do democracy.
There's this concept called citizens' assemblies, where you bring together a randomly selected group of people, like a miniature, diverse version of the whole country, to tackle really tough, divisive political issues. They hear from experts, they debate, and they develop policy ideas. This method was famously used in Ireland to help navigate the incredibly complex national conversation around abortion law reform.
But, and this is a really big but, we have to be careful here. Collective intelligence isn't some kind of magic bullet. It doesn't always work. And sometimes a crowd isn't wise, it's just a mob. So what makes a smart group suddenly turn dumb?
Well, the main culprit is something called the social influence effect. Remember the key ingredient in the ox story? Independence. Everyone made their guess alone. Well, social influence is what happens when you lose that. When people start affecting each other's opinions, the diversity of thought just evaporates. The group can then get overconfident and zoom in on the wrong answer. This is how you get market bubbles and dangerous groupthink. And it's also really important to mention that this is still a pretty new science. Researchers are actively debating the best ways to even measure collective intelligence and how solid the evidence is for things like that single C factor. There are critiques and questions, which is exactly what you want to see in a healthy, growing field of study.
So where does this all take us? What's the next chapter for our ability to think together? Well, the future seems to be all about taking these principles and cranking them up to 11 with technology.
The really exciting frontier is in combining human and machine intelligence. Imagine being on a team where an AI isn't just a search engine, but a facilitator. An AI that could make sure everyone gets a chance to speak, that could find the common ground between different ideas, and even point out our own biases in real time. That kind of human-AI partnership could help us solve huge problems, like climate change or curing diseases.
And that's really the big idea I want to leave you with. We've seen just how powerful human groups can be when they're structured the right way. So just imagine what becomes possible when we learn to fuse our collective social intelligence with the raw processing power of AI. The potential is just staggering. Thanks so much for joining me.